The day of the week is Thursday, fellow chaps, which means I have returned from traveling and it's time for a belated first thoughts and initial impressions video for Bystander Hwayoung, the character that was shown yesterday over on Stove and YouTube, and also had a leak about a week ago at this point. I usually do not talk about leaks when they break on this channel just as a matter of principle, in case you're wondering why I didn't talk about it then. If you follow other gacha games, you're probably well aware of leaks in those spaces, those circles. You may also be familiar with some of the legal issues surrounding them. In the Hwayoverse space alone, there have been massive lawsuits that have ruined the lives of other content creators. Not saying Smilegate would suddenly do something like this to our content creators, but me personally, I don't think it is a good look when an official Epic 7 content creator is openly discussing things that are currently being struck via copyright from websites on the internet. Again, that's just my 2 cents on the issue. And in this video, you can get my 2 cents on Bystander Hwayoung, including her kit. Do I think she's good? Where and how I think she will be played? And all that other wonderful stuff you've come to expect from me in a first thoughts and an initial impressions video. Anyways, without any further ado, let's take a look at Bystander Hwayoung's S3 animation.
Such a drag. Ugh, stop dragging this out. So, the footsteps following me were from you? Wasn't you? Ugh, my scars hurt again. Is it gonna rain?
This might actually be one of my favorite S3 animations of the entire year, simply because there is an insane amount of detail packed into every single frame of this animation. The blurry camera, her walking around the corner and making eye contact with you, the nothing personal kid teleport, the fact that they render the entire animation of her knee colliding with and breaking your nose while she ricochets off your face as you fall backwards and the camera kind of tracks with it. Then you get to watch her fall down on top of you, kick your entire body through the asphalt, down into a subway station underground. Yes, in case you missed it, she kicks you into a subway station. Blink for even a second and you'll miss it. Just like you'll miss her cat that's just kind of chilling here in the final frame of the animation. There is an insane amount of detail packed into just a 5-second skill. Moving on to voiceover trivia, Bystander Hwayoung in the English dub of Epic 7 is voiced by Jentel Hawkins. She is a voiceover coach, much like Mediator Queric's Brayden Lynch, and you can also hear her in the 2024 Fairly Odd Parents reboot. Moving on to Bystander Hwayoung's stats, she is a Dark Warrior of the Scorpio Zodiac symbol, which means she shares a stat line with Arunca, the Immortal Wukong, Lone Crest of Bellona, and the collab hero Rem. Taking a closer look at her stats, she has 1,208 attack, 616 defense, 6,488 health, 102 base speed, 15% critical hit chance, 150% critical hit damage, and no starting effectives or effect resistance. This translates to above average attack as well as health, and average to ever so slightly above average defense, but it comes at the cost of having a low base speed at 102. Taking a look at her imprints, she has health percentage for the team as well as critical hit chance for herself. These are amazing imprints for this character because, as we see in a second when we talk about the kit, I do think that this is going to be an anti-aggression hero, so having more health for the team is very desirable in order for her to be really good in her niche. On top of that, critical hit chance is by far the best self-imprint for a damage dealer if they are actually able to land critical strikes. So I expect most people will probably end up feeding their red Hwayoung to this character if they end up pulling for her. But please, please, always keep at least one copy of every single hero. If you must feed the character, at least open up the story summon and get an alternative copy. You don't want to be in a situation where they somehow just randomly buff the old Hwayoung and she's just amazing again and you're without that character. Cool? Got it? All right, let's talk about the kit. First up is Hwayoung's ultimate skill, Sura, Reave the Skies. You acquire 2 souls upon use, and it has a 3 to 4 turn cooldown, depending on Malagora. Attacks the enemy with a rage-filled strike. When the enemy is defeated, inflicts extinction. When the target is a hero, ignores damage reduction and damage sharing effects. When the target is of the light element, increases damage dealt. Soulboard effect for the cost of 10 souls, increases damage dealt. single target nuke, probably kills something in one hit, 3-turn cooldown, and it's on a character named Hwayoung. I've been down this road before. Skill 2 is a passive called Divine Vessel. Hwayoung is immune to buffs and debuffs. At the start of the first battle, increases Hwayoung's defense proportional to her attack. The rate of increased defense effect does not change after it is activated. After an ally except for the caster is attacked, when the damage suffered is 40% or more of that target's maximum health, activates Sura, Reave the Skies, against a random enemy. Can only be activated once every 3 to 4 turns depending on Malagora. And finally, we come to Bystander Hwayoung's basic attack skill, Infernal Strike. Attacks the enemy with kicks and increases the combat radius of Hwayoung by 15 to 20% depending on Malagora. Alright, well, now that you know the skills, let's talk about the actual kit, starting with that Infernal Strike, because it's the easiest thing to talk about. It's that same really boring S1 you've come to expect, because they know that only things like sleeps, stuns, guaranteed dual attacks, or combat readiness increases really sell the character on the S1. Infernal Strike is a slightly worse S1 than Release Red Hwayoung's S1, but is still better than current Hwayoung's S1, and is a power creep version of what is traditionally one of the better basic attack skills of the game. Normally, this move is a 15% combat readiness increase with some kind of conditional to get more out of it, or it's like 15% for the caster and another character, right? This is just straight up 20%, which means that counter set Bystander Hwayoung is naturally on the table, because if you get a counterattack, Infernal Strike pushes you 20 CR. That could allow her to cut and could be a game-deciding factor. The rest of the kit revolves around Sura, Reave the Skies, so let's talk about it. This move on paper reads like Monarch's Flaming Strike from Release Hwayoung, crossed with the Will of the Mare, which is Little Queen Charlotte's skill 3. That is a very terrifying proposition when it comes to high damage moves and the frequency at which they come out. We have to see the damage multipliers on the skill, but depending on what they are, is really going to determine how good Bystander Hwayoung is in a general use sense, because otherwise she might be relegated to just kind of anti-aggression, which we'll talk about when we talk about her skill 2. At this point though, in Epic 7's lifespan, most single target skill 3s should be hitting at 1.8x attack, right? It should be at that level or better. That's Spectre Tenebria's value and a number of other hard-hitting characters. As for the soul burn, since this is 2024 and Smilegate just wants to push the shit out of every single Moonlight 5-star to get you to buy it, I would expect a 2.5x attack multiplier. This puts her in line with Green Celine, who is the poster child at this point in the meta for single target nuke soul burns. These are the numbers I would expect the character to have, but who knows? That said, she also gets a damage increase versus light, which is her intended target, right? Knowing Smilegate, they probably gave her worse multipliers on average, right? And then you would get the 1.8x or 2.5x multipliers after the damage increase versus light, right? So in the past, elemental advantage bonuses are almost always 30% extra damage. So if you solve for a 30% increase of x equals 1.8x, you get a value of 1.38, so roughly about 1.4x attack. If you solve for a 30% increase of damage of x equals a 2.5x attack multiplier, which is again Celine's soul burn, then you would get a value of 1.92. So roughly 1.9 or 2x attack multiplier is what you'd expect on the soul burn. So that way, when you actually soul burn into a light unit, you get similar performance to what Green Celine would get on a soul burn. Remember though, Celine gets an attack buff from Secret Art Storm Sword, which is where you're usually using her. Bystander Hwayoung's passive, Divine Vessel, says, remember, that she cannot receive buffs. That means that she will not have an attack buff like almost every other damage dealer in the game at this point that gets used. Attack buff should give you 50% more attack. So it's safe to say, to compensate for this, the multipliers probably should be about 50% higher, right? So therefore, if we kind of adjust our values, we should get about a 2.1x attack multiplier for the skill 3 and roughly a 2.9x attack for the soul burn. My guess is that her multipliers are going to be anywhere from a 2.1x attack to 2.3x for Reeve the Skies naturally, with the soul burn being around 2.9x or 3x, right? And all of this is, again, assuming that we get a 30% damage bonus versus light units, right? That's just my quick napkin math. It could definitely be wrong. I'm not exactly an expert on this. Anyways, once we know the numbers, you can basically check for yourself and compare them to the numbers that I came up with here. If they are significantly lower than what I said here, character's probably bad. If they're the same or better, character could probably be pretty good, at least in a general use sense. Anyways, let's round out the kit discussion by talking about her skill 2 passive, Divine Vessel again. We've already talked about the very real drawback that immune to buffs has with Reeve the Skies and my napkin math. No attack buffs means that we have to have sky-high multipliers to compensate, or the character's just going to plain suck. And that's before we talk about the fact that getting her to live through things is going to feel like a nightmare. Remember, she can't get barriers or useful buffs like damage limit. These are things that are in the meta that a lot of players use to keep squishy heroes alive. That boosted defense value from this passive needs to be ginormous, or this character is going to, again, feel awful. But hopefully not too ginormous, because we don't want the character to be like a tank. Otherwise, it's very, very frustrating and not fun to play against. SG has been absolutely terrible, I feel like, so far, balancing these scaling effects, so I'm not really holding my breath. Where Bystander Hwayoung, though, is most likely to shine is in turn 2 team compositions versus cleave or highly aggressive AoE teams in World Arena. I haven't seen too many players make the comparison to Ikarina, but I actually feel like she is the unit that Bystander Hwayoung is most akin to. If your opponent tries to kill someone else on the team before her, there's a fairly good chance that Hwayoung just stomps that character into the ground. This is why I like counter set on her, because she will naturally come under fire from players that are trying to play around her passive. This allows her to potentially get more CR pushes and therefore take more turns in the long run. This is definitely a character that I think is not going to be heavy on speed as a result, favoring the slow but not too slow speed ranges that you've come to expect from other Scorpio warriors such as Lone Crescent Bellona, for example. Basically, the 170 speed or slower category. This is definitely going to be a case where you want either a critical hit damage necklace or a critical hit chance necklace with an attack percentage ring, and either attack percentage boots or health percentage boots, depending on how much defense you get from her passive with attack percentage, right? You need to have speed also probably sprinkled into a number of your other pieces. For example, if you go attack percentage boots, make sure you have speed as a substat. If you want to go all damage on this character, right? You just want to absolutely nuke somebody as a counter pick, I think destruction has to be the way to go on the character, because mathematically, it puts every other 4-piece set to shame in terms of raw stats. If you go with a speed set, you are just leaving a ton of damage or a ton of bulk on the table, right? This character is going to be very, very stat hungry, just like with every other Scorpio warrior that we've had thus far, right? And this is going to be especially true for those of you out there who cannot get this character to triple S imprint and get that free 16% critical hit chance. As for artifacts, I think Pipette Lance or Sigurd Scythe are going to be the clear choices here in order to sustain Hwayoung and also give her bonus damage. Remember, this character cannot get barriers, which is a massive reason a lot of characters stay alive for as long as they do in the current format. This is doubly so for those of you out there that try to draft Empyrean Illinev every single game on Rise of a Monarch, because you'll get 0 value on that artifact with Hwayoung on your team. Warhorn also seems like a fairly interesting proposition to me, because it gives bonus attack to the team and also gives her some very needed turn cycling, especially for a character with such a short cooldown on such a powerful skill 3 nuke. At worst, right now, to me, Bystander Hwayoung feels like a super Karina designed to combat cleave and aggro style teams with the ability to be used as a niche counterpick versus light heroes, especially those that have some kind of built-in damage reduction, such as Sylvan Sage Vivian. At best, She's going to be a generically strong single target damage dealer that becomes incredibly nightmarish to play against as soon as you combine her with heroes like Blood Moon Haste, Dragon Bride Senya, or even Harseti. The damage numbers on this character at the end of the day are going to determine a lot, and I'm very pessimistic because Hwayoung is the poster child for the we play it safe because we messed up with her in the past, right? Also, she has Extinction in the kit, which is a surefire sign that she's probably trash because it feels like there's just never any generically good Extinction units in most formats. Tristan Wolfe often calls giving a character Extinction the kiss of death for their viability because it just feels like once a character gets Extinction, they're just doomed to suck. Anyways, me, personally, I'm pulling for the character. You guys know out there, I love Sirmia, I love my Sword Girls, but if there's anything I love more than Sword Girls, as I said in How to Play Hwayoung, it's the type of woman that can kick my ass. And those are my thoughts on Bystander Hwayoung. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and also let me know how bad my napkin math actually is here, right? Anyways, as always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Later now.